There's our recording in progress. Okay, so I think we're dual meetings, so we got to do this twice, right? Stephen? Okay. Okay, folks, welcome to this special meeting of the Nantucket Historic District Commission. It's Thursday, March 9th at 3:30 what?
38.
3:38. Okay, and present live in the room, we have Carrie Thornwell, Val Oliver, Stephen Welch, and myself, Ray Cole. And so far on Zoom, we have Connie Patton. And I think that might be it. So have I just officially opened the agenda?
I think so.
Yeah.
Adopt the agenda.
Yeah, so why don't we have a motion to adopt today's agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. All those in favor, actually roll call. Connie?
Aye.
Thank you. Carrie?
Aye.
Val?
Aye.
Stephen?
Aye.
And I'm in favor. Okay, there's that. Okay, so we're officially open and now I'm going to allow Stephen to open his meeting.
Okay, call this meeting of the HDC Organizational Focus Committee to order. It's the same day and about the same time. So just stated, and can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. With the members present, I'll point out for those at home eating popcorn.
Yeah.
Okay, so two items on our agenda for the special meeting are an update on the HDC advisory boards from Holly and the interactions and scheduling, whatever information you have from the last time, and then to review the HDC's draft scope of services for operations review. Holly, I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just passed out a draft of chapter 124. As you recall, back in August, I think, when the notification came out that the advisory boards were defunct, and we needed to work on a way to legalize them if that was so inclined. This is a draft that I put together based on basically communication, example of the only sole example of having advisory boards for a preservation commission in the country from Maryland. It has been provided to town council. I have not yet received any comments back, but it also includes some of the language that Nikki had provided to you all for us to discuss. This is for a long-term solution versus this interim short-term solution. As I really can't, it's really hard from a pragmatic standpoint to separate the two. So that's what I wanted to provide to you all. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get it to you sooner. Again, a lot of what Nikki had provided in these policies and procedures are already baked into what she was already drafted. So again, I'm waiting for town council to give some feedback on that. And I would love to know any comments that you all may have, and that's my update there.
Okay, thank you so much, Holly. So what I'd just like to suggest is y'all take this home and take a look through it. And it's, as Holly said, part of the longer term solution. An interim solution will be worked through with staff and the two chairs, I think primarily Nikki. And if you have comments, I think what we'll do is kind of poll whether people have comments at the next regular meeting. And if there are, can be minor, I think we can just, we'll put on the agenda to poll membership for comments. And if there's a few comments, we'll maybe, if it works out for you, Mr. Chair, we'll do that at that meeting. And if it's something people want to get into discussion about, then we'll have to do it we'll do it at a Thursday meeting. So if this is read and accepted by everyone with a couple of, skip on the grammar and periods, but right. There's only one thing that I see, which is that the select board with the appointment of members will be made by the select board with HDC membership input. I think that we would probably be more comfortable tightening that up a little bit. And I would think of some language to put in there, but I guess what I'm saying is, if we each have a comment, then we could probably tackle this at a regular meeting. If we poll the members at a regular meeting, and some people are like, well, I've got 5 or 10 comments, and someone else says I have 5 or 10, then maybe we should put it off for Thursday.
Yeah, well, okay, what you say makes sense. I want to make sure of a few things.
Yep.
Okay, this is the short-term solution.
No,
No.
this would be the long-term solution
To get it going.
to actually legalize.
Okay,
Can I,
well, hang on a second. So the short-term solution is what we're doing right now.
no,
What?
I think
Yeah,
so.
please.
Holly and I had a couple discussions about this. We haven't discussed this particular topic, but we discussed kind of tackling the short term and the long term. And programmatically, I think what Holly was alluding to when she said programmatically, starting to differentiate the
Yes,
two,
yes,
is the idea that at least scoping out the longer term in a fairly comprehensive way, but not every single detail, and having town council review it is really a first step to the short term, because then you can pull out of it in a way that's consistent with what the longer term will look like. Is that a fair guesstimate of what?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So this was the long term. This is Holly's first draft at the long-term solution that incorporates feedback already provided by the chair of the Structures Advisory.
Mhm.
And it includes, I presume, the structures takes also from the SAC because they're established. already.
Correct. And that was, and on that note, to jump in on that, I already, touched base with Billy, since he's so ingrained with the sign advisory council and what they cannot do and all that stuff. I had him take a look at it and give me feedback on this as well. So this is meant to handle all of them.
Right. Okay, I don't want to belabor this, and maybe I'm sort of missing it, but I thought that the longer term solution, the reason that we're calling it a longer term solution is that we had to change something in order, change something at the level of like town meeting to be able to affect this. But doesn't the select board currently have the ability to do our advisory boards for us? And the only proviso that we would be adding to that is, according to this language, which I would say, you present it as select board and they say, okay, we're good with this language. This language is good. And we already have the ability to, appoint the advisory boards for the HDC, because that's within our powers currently to do. Why is that considered a long-term as opposed to a short-term solution? Because isn't it just as simple as running it past a select board and then going, okay, that sounds good. That's good. We're all right with these terms.
Do you want to do it?
Is that, what am I missing?
My understanding, the only board that they could do that with is the sign advisory council, because there are already rules and parameters set in the law for them to do what they've been doing.
In what law?
In the town.
And it's-
Okay,
Yes.
all right, okay, so it does require a larger,
And one chapter,
Yeah,
this
okay.
section
Got
of
it.
chapter 124 of the general bylaw exists already for HDC. And there are mechanisms in here for us to go, okay, let's create this, and that's why this chapter
all right,
was
thank you.
utilized.
Thank you for breaking it down for me, because now I fully understand.
So it's the codification, so we actually have the foundation for the next.
That's
step.
exactly it, and this would give the parameters and guide rails and all that stuff. Of how they would operate, because right now, even when they were active, there was nothing set in at all.
Right,
This gives it that.
okay, thank you very much.
Good.
Thank you very much.
I do have a couple quick questions. One, Holly, my understanding, I haven't read through the town charter, I admit, I actually didn't know we could get it online, because I looked for it once years ago and I couldn't find it. Is that given 124, and if you don't feel comfortable answering this, that's fine, but given that 124 is in the town charter and the select board has the authority to create regulations through a public notice process under certain chapters of the code, they have ability to amend or change those regulations. that there may be, and this would be a question I got for town council. Under the current town charter, there may be an avenue where, under the authority and powers of the select board as exist, they would be able to implement this as a regulation versus having to go to town meeting, because it's not a modification of the town charter with respect to, it's a supplemental regulation that's already provisioned for versus one that never existed.
Yeah, I would defer to town council. on
Okay,
that.
yeah, well, yeah, I'd
It's
like
a
to see
seriously
it.
good question.
And
Because
that
it
would
would
make it a
save a
shorter
hell of a lot of,
process.
strife and
Right.
time, frankly.
And then the other thing I just wanted to comment, I think I just can't underscore the importance of each of us with our individual experience, including, obviously Holly, but Esme, if you can, certainly Billy, like looking at this, if you haven't already, and we haven't, and be forward looking based on your own experience with the advisory groups, what works, what doesn't, what could be improved.
Yeah.
Because if there's anything in here that becomes codified, then it's set in stone.
Mhm.
And if it's something that is a matter that is not within the codification, then that's okay, because as long as it's provision that it can be added on in operations, like as a policy, as a procedure. But anything that's actually going to become part of the regulation and the text, I just really urge you guys to look at closely, because it will be there for a while. And we want to make sure it works
Okay.
to the HDC's advantage. So it's a short way of saying, look at this and be very selfish. Because that's really what this is for. These groups are to serve the interests and efficiency and effectiveness of the HDC.
Mhm.
And that means as individual commissioners, we need to weigh in. I hope that's taken the spirit intended.
Okay.
Okay. Next up is the draft scope of services for HDC operations review. I'm just gonna walk you through the document quickly, and then we'll go to the meat of the matter. So the first page and an eighth is a recap of our discussion at the last meeting and various meetings prior to. So, I try to pay attention to individual members' thought. As the chair of the organizational focus committee, I try to pay attention to individual members' concerns as they're voiced over the course of the year or years. Not unlike we all know that Diane's, primary tiny little individual concern is getting windows. So I try to be observant of those things. That having been said, I took that information and the information at our last meeting, and I did a compilation, which was the first page and an eighth. And it gives us a background and commentary. It outlines areas of concern. And it talks about supplemental observation, which is an HDC training and reference manual, which could be developed as a kind of a cold Bible to building with Nantucket in mind. And the idea there is it would clarify expectations and procedures and establish a common understanding amongst and between us commissioners and new commissioners over time. So it would I think it would basically institutionalize accepted and acceptable practices. The reason I put this together, this page and eight, is because, and a lot of times when you do an organizational review, there is a initial meeting, and that initial meeting is with the consultant, and it's to establish what it is you're trying to accomplish. So this paints a picture of part of what the HDC is looking to accomplish. I do note in here, and I think it's important that I just want to read the first sentence for the page. HDC commissioners recently met to review and revise a draft scope of services pertaining to review of HD operations. The draft was provided by the town manager at request of other leadership, the select board, as an assist to the HDC. Basically, what this document is now is the HDC taking ownership and providing its input on what it believes are the material elements of a successful independent review. We all live it, we drink it, it's part of our weekly life. And that's the information, again, based on our meeting last Thursday and my year sitting at the table listening to other commissioners' concerns. we have before us the second and third page, which is a statement of our consent, if we vote so, and we can make modifications to this, to adopt the concept of an independent review subject to the following goals, objectives, and targeted outcomes. There are 3 areas. There are 4 areas, forgive me. The first is, I'll just go through them one by one versus explaining them.
Diane's trying to get in.
Oh,
Oh,
so she missed that whole first thing?
yeah, she's not on yet. I just told her to go to her email for a new Zoom link.
I've emailed her 3 times.
I know. I'm not saying stop, I just want.
No, I really was hoping not to have to go backwards because it's kind of important stuff.
How long has she been trying to get on?
I don't know.
Emailed her at 3:30, right when we started.
So a while.
Okay, so what do you think? Should I continue?
Yeah.
So again,
I have Diane on the line.
We just, so I've emailed
The
her
telephone line?
Yeah.
to tell her to check her email.
Okay.
It's a new link.
All right.
thanks, Nikki.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I want her to be involved. Don't get me wrong, I guess. Should we wait 30 seconds?
Now that we know she's on the new link.
I know, we can't talk on this, but I so just want to ask everybody what happened last night at the select board meeting on the.
No, not right.
Well, I read it, yeah, but I didn't get to see, I was traveling back, so I didn't get to see what actually happened. Oh, that reminds me, under this topic of tools, one of the things I wanted to, well, I want to remember, so I'll just put it out there in collective consciousness, is when applicants put in the appeals, they put in the proposed minutes. And the select board don't have an opportunity to
Oh.
read,
That's been an ongoing issue.
yeah, and they don't really get an opportunity to read
All of it,
the full
They do.
minutes.
we give them.
Oh, I didn't see them in the,
They're there.
853.
850 pages, yeah, it's all there.
Really?
All there.
Oh.
so the final minutes are in there.
Everything.
So maybe one of the things we can do is we can put those at the very beginning.
Well, is it up to us to do the appeal?
Well, it's up to us
So
to
you're right.
present the information for them to understand, but when you're presenting as a regulatory board, I would think that you have the latitude to be the first one to speak.
Oh, gotcha.
And then, and it's not like we're speaking our opinions, I mean, we are, but it's the record. Because if they read the minutes 15 times, by the time they get to the end, they may not understand, or I'm not sure where they are in the document, but they may not understand that, oh, there's an actual official final version. So if we put those up front,
That would really only apply to the last meeting, right? I mean, because all the minutes are approved. You know, so.
no, because they put it most of the time, in any of the appeals I've reviewed, I've never seen an applicant and the appellant put in any of because what they do is they compile the information as they go, and it's always the proposed minutes. And then it all goes into their brief as Ms. Diana.
Diane?
Yeah, I'm on.
Okay, great.
Hey, Diane, we've gone through a couple of different things. If you don't mind, I'm just gonna pick up where we left off. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So
I don't know. I had, it just didn't work, and thank you for straightening it out.
Sure. Well,
Okay.
I want you to be involved. So Diane, what we're doing now is we're reviewing the actual scope of services that we would request of the select board be provided for an RFP. And we've already covered the kind of background information that we would like to have included, or background information that we would like to have included. which is the first page and an eighth of the document that you were emailed last week.
Okay, yeah,
So where we are is, second page under the heading draft scope of services for HDC operations review, meeting of March 9th. The idea is, we'll get a unanimous consent of whatever the final product is of our meeting this afternoon. So it states by unanimous consent of commissioners as voted today, the commission adopted the concept of an independent review subject to the following goals, objectives, and targeted outcomes. Number one is to review commissioner and staff operations and their interactions with applicants, applicant agents, abutters, and the general public to provide operations related assessments and recommendations, including as relate to 4 different areas. One is programmatic to confirm or help ensure observance of the town of Nantucket Committee Handbook and Code of Conduct, the open meeting law, conflict of interest law, and state ethics commission guidelines. This is pretty routine approach. By the way, any of the text you see in Times New Roman is from the original draft, which most of that I pulled into this document. Any questions on that?
You mean part A?
Yeah, I just figured we'll nail it as we go.
Wow, okay, all right. Yeah.
Is there any concerns or? The next item would be to help ensure hearings are appropriately managed following Robert's Rules of Order with commissioner concerns reserved to agenda items targeting the appropriateness of proposals. Should be, that is measured against HDC established guidelines, practices, regulations, and standards. So basically what that is to determine to what extent we as an organization tend to follow Robert's rules and stick to our purview. As we all, I'm not putting this in the draft, but as we all know, the reason it's important to stick to our purview is because on appeal, something could be reversed at the state level if testimony were allowed and not countered that had to do with things such as noise or I guess the zoning regulation for night skies or parking or these other items, water quality or flooding or stormwater or so on and so forth. So this would be kind of a standard portion of a review. Also, it's to help address the length of time it takes to hear applications, and the idea is to make meetings reasonably more efficient, not more efficient at the expense of effectiveness. Comments or concerns on B? No. Okay. I want to state one thing just out of the context here, but that's topical. I'm a constructive criticizer. That's what I do. I have probably the highest expectations for anyone in the room or of myself. So I just hope no one looks at these as being critical. That's not the intention. It's just trying to lay out, bear it down and lay it out. And then, so we can have someone do the assessment. The third item is to help ensure application processing is effective and efficient from initial submission through issuance of a certificate of appropriateness. This including regular submission of properly prepared applications and appropriate staff resources. So this speaks to the specifically to concerns that have been stated over a number of years and came up in the independent, Diane's article, this discussion of Diane's article, which boiled down to, after the first round, having someone or someones who understand the relevant material and have the time and to be reviewing applications and providing that they are not only reviewed in context of what's approvable, but also simply that they're complete, so that when we get them, they're all right side up. The information we need is in the application, and we can move forward with it. Thoughts, comments, or concerns on that?
I would add the ability of the staff to reject an application until it is complete, to then be processed through.
That does exist, I believe.
Yeah.
It does, it's just hard to do, I think. but if they
Well, a lot
can
of,
say,
a lot of this,
this
and
is regulation now.
I totally hear what you're saying, you know, a lot of this is reiterating stuff that we already know to be a problem, like the length of the hearing of an application. Okay, so we just reviewed something that says to keep it succinct and all that, and Stephen has gone so far as to establish, and, you know, 2 minutes for the applicant, you know, a minute for rebuttal, you know, all that. And then it sort of gets down to a question of enforcement, and there are certain people who shall remain nameless who violate that routinely, and so then it comes down to, we already have this stuff in place. We just have to use
Or
it,
is it-
you know, we have to enforce it, and I think everyone is reluctant, you know, there, of course. I can't imagine, you know, somebody comes in and says like, oh, here I am, you know, I got it, and you say, oh, I don't think, you know. So.
I would enforce it.
The power is there to reject an application, but I also think it's like, well, it can be tough to do. In the same way, it's like tough to get shut somebody down, like in the middle. of
Right,
their
because the job is also to help people.
Yeah.
So
right,
they
yeah.
want to help them and do, you know,
Right.
do right by applicants.
I can attest to an application that was just recently dropped off to admin staff out there that they said, look at this, this is a joke. I gotta contact them and they gotta submit X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, you know,
Where's the
I
checklist?
get it, I get it. Oh,
The
no,
checklist.
checklist was checked off. I said the same.
Well, that's what happens all the
Example,
time.
they didn't
It's
read
all
it.
checked. It's
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, there is
But
no like.
That's when having the door person will come in
Mhm,
handy. Is
okay.
if you have to wait in line to submit your stuff on a Tuesday, so be it. You gotta wait in line, because we're gonna look at them all before, and if they're not, if it's like that, then you can send the guy back and say, this is that.
Yeah,
Additionally, if somebody comes to the meeting and it's not complete,
Complete.
we
It
need
puts
to
it
be
on us. Yeah,
more
this is
firm
not
about
complete,
saying,
we're not looking at it.
we've
But it's
taken
already been
advantage of
waiting
that
for
on a
6
few
weeks, that's the
occasions.
problem, is when
Right.
when an application has been waiting for weeks and weeks to come to the actual table after it's been. So I feel like there just needs to be a policeman hired, that you guys don't have to do it.
So part of, well, the policeman doesn't want to have to do it either. Part of this is, so just a couple quick thoughts. The idea that you have an independent authority taking a review and making statements, that is itself a tool. And what I mean by that is the tool for staff to be able to say, we've adopted under our best practices incomplete applications, and the staff have full authority to deny at time of review submission, because it's incomplete. One tool that we can use as a commission and on behalf of staff is to sub out kind of you be the bad guy, so that you have an independent authority who's making a review and saying, yeah, this needs to be done. The other part of this is, you know, that helps us too. We're not sitting at the table. We can say, hey, look, you know, the top national firm in these matters told us we can't accept these things. And I'm not looking to sidestep the responsibility myself. Like, it's incomplete, I'm sorry, but it's important that it be complete. Now, I want to back up to the front of the document. One sec. I want to back up to the front of the document, because this is important to reiterate why the people who do this study need to understand our perspective. One of the reasons is because the complexity, contentiousness, and the number of recent applications has created a backlog. That is one reason we need some of these tools. The other is that it affects the length of time during hearings. The other is that backlog has brought into focus a second backlog, and that second backlog is which is operational self-assessment and subsequent course corrections. So we have a backlog in doing self-assessment and self-correcting our course. But part of that has to do with the next topic, which is a regulatory authority understanding ownership of its powers to contribute under the HDC's Establishing Act, and our concomitant responsibilities are missing from the process in various degrees. This due in parts to awareness, acceptance, and will. More specifically, I'm not going to get into the details, but the power to contribute as stewards, what that means, examples of some that are well established, and as examples of some that aren't. The reason that we need to exercise that power, including denying incomplete applications, is that it consistently provide applicants a principle and merit-based review process revolving around clear expectations, which are sometimes missing. And then that goes on to judicious denials. We don't need to get into that. The other is the responsibilities and this gets to responsibilities that are included are both about stating something isn't complete, stating things succinctly, referencing the guidelines, referencing the rules and the regulations, not talking about personal, it's fine to talk about our subjectivity, our opinion on the guideline, but we need to be looking at the guideline. And the idea of me bringing these up is not just with respect to us, but then it's hopeful that this information, as opposed to initial meeting with the consultant, will help them understand our perspective, and it extends to staff so that they understand that we believe our staff have a power to contribute, and they also have a responsibility. And that the idea is that this group in their review process are providing tools that will help all of us accomplish the goal. Which brings us back to D. To the next item, because I think we covered to help.
We did.
Okay. To support development of tools from which the HDC may benefit, to help limit time drag processing and ever increasing level of contentious applications, that's sub 1. And in relation to enhance the commission's maturity and ability to appropriately addressing inappropriate applications. So that is where we feel confident as a regulatory authority in saying, you know what, we really appreciate that you put time into this, but it requires a thoughtful redesign. You need to go back to the drawing board. Instead of going through a 5 or 6 meeting, death by 1,000 cuts, which, by the way, we have a best practices to try and prevent that, but we also need to have the strength of our own will and sense of ownership to feel that we can exercise that denial. Because we're currently not doing it. And I think it's a social dynamic. We all work with other people. We are doing the right thing, but at the same time, we don't want to just say an outright no right up at the beginning sometimes. And we all have a responsibility to understand how we can do that, how we might do it in a way that's more appropriate than others, and all that stuff that's related to it. Anyone thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think the hesitancy, I'll speak for myself, is that some people want you to deny them so they can appeal to the select board. I think that system is a little wonky.
It's not a full out denial, though. It's saying this is wholly not appropriate, but you have another chance to come back. It's not saying
Well,
you're
there's
denied,
2 different things.
isn't it?
Okay, so one is Stephen said, if something comes in and it's just like way off the mark, instead of going like, well, the windows are too narrow.
Right, no, I get that.
Then you just basically, as a board, you sort of say, hey, you know what? Way off. Like, we're not gonna spend 45 minutes parsing this.
It happened.
Go back, redesign it, redesign it, read the building with Nantucket in mind. So that's one thing.
Right.
Then the other thing is this idea of the death by 1,000 cuts, where we have an applicant that comes in, well, for like, say, 4 years, right? Somebody comes in for 4 years and you get a roof ridge that's dropped 6 inches. And that door changes from a 9 light to a 6 light, or something like that. And so every week, over and over. And so part 2 of this is, hey, after a while, we go, you know what? We're asking for big changes and we're getting small ones, and we're going to deny you. And so, look, the bottom line is, if they've decided in advance that they want to go to the select board, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And now it either happens after we've reviewed an application 30 times or 3 times, and which would we rather have? 3 times.
Well, there is that
Has both
policy
clients,
too,
I'm
the
sure.
3 and you're out.
That's what I'm suggesting.
I thought you were talking about like the out and out.
Denial.
You mean at the front end?
No,
Okay, an example of this.
No, I'm just trying to understand.
Well, a clear example of this is something as simple and complicated as solar panels, okay? So, hey, look, they're on the front of the house, they're on the front of the main ridge, you know, it's, you know, in violation of all the rules. And it's like, you can't put them on the back of the house, you can't do this, that, so it's not gonna be a long protracted HDC process, because there ain't a lot of choices. So, in that case, you know, very frequently, the applicant will say, well, you know, give me a denial. Clearly, you know, they want to take it to the select board and have it heard at a higher level. It's a little different from a house design.
Yeah.
You know, so I certainly don't mind denying something like a solar panel if it's completely inappropriate. And they say, well, no, we can't do we can't do a ground array, there's nothing else we can do. This
well,
is
we're
it.
working on that.
Yeah, well, so.
Yeah, we got a lot of
Anyway,
solutions.
I was just saying that, you know, there's two different things. One is a house and the other one is a solar
Yeah,
panel.
yeah.
They're really different.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry to belabor that, but continue.
No, that's, any other thoughts on that, Diane?
Well, I was just listening. I was at the meeting last night. And this is one of the things that came up was that a specific thought that Holly read every time because she does was not specifically. There should be a thing on our submission paper that says that what qualification it's going for. Holly, you were there, you know what they were talking about. And that's one reason it's got remanded back to us. So, it's something,
Different topic, but.
what? It's something we have to consider and should have it established with that we know what it is. So we can say this has to be done and it doesn't go back and forth and whatever. That
I'll
is,
watch them.
Yeah, me too.
I'll watch the meeting, Diane. I'm sorry, because it's hard to understand out of context. I appreciate the point you're making is like they've made a point and it sounds like something we need to address. I just want to point out that you guys, this isn't like something that's going to happen in a vacuum. They're going to be interviewing each one of you
Yeah,
and on all these matters. And that will be an opportunity. I think it would be beneficial that we do it with questions by email, and then people can put down thoughtful answers in advance.
I think that's
How they would
what
do
would be doing.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's the process, that would be the process.
Yeah, they'll interview and then they'll observe and then they'll.
Oh, yeah, there's definitely going to be.
Yeah. Okay, so the next item, so that's one category. The next category of goals, objectives, and target outcomes that we're adopting, this concept of an independent review to accomplish is to review staff operations on behalf of the commission. In addition, that is in addition to assessments and recommendations addressed in the above. So there are some things that relate to the staff and the above portion. And we're saying this is a separate area. A is, again, largely these are taken from the draft that we were provided, and then I've added some context or some supplemental comments. Are staff resources sufficient to meet day-to-day needs, to assess appropriately complete application submissions and otherwise, and to assist the HDC with planning or other initiatives within its purview? So I just want to explain briefly, to assist the HDC with planning or other initiatives within its purview. We didn't speak about that really last Thursday, but it's something we've spoken about on and off for several years. And the idea there is that we're kind of caught up due to the volume of applications, looking at the trees instead of the forest. And we have a preservation planner who has a few contacts in the planning department. And it would be good to be able to look at maybe area plans or, you know, design charrettes of things that we could be doing as the HDC in terms of planning for helping to guide future applicants in a way that's consistent with a particular area. Just using that as an example, I'm not saying it's a priority, I'm not even saying it's something that will happen. That just is the concept of, are staff resources sufficient to assist the HDC with planning or other initiatives within its purview? If that example was not in our purview, please don't chastise me. Well, we can use one that is. It's just the one that comes to mind. I think we've done area plans in the past.
But nobody pays attention to them.
Well, but that's why we need
Yeah.
to we need to consolidate and feel empowered. And part of that empowerment is to be acting appropriately, so we have credibility. Because if we're just stating things and they're not referencing our guidelines, our rules and regulations. What, I learned a long time ago, and something my father told me is, a position gives you the authority. How you handle it, how you act, gives you the respect.
Yep.
And that, there are people who are never going to respect the HDC because they frankly don't believe it's necessary. I don't think it's a minority. Well, it's a minority, but I don't think it's a vocal minority. But there are people who, I think sometimes reasonably question our authority, because sometimes we need as a body. I'm not saying this particular group of people, I'm saying over the last 10 or 15 years. There's some cleaning up of our act to do and taking responsibility for our actions, is I guess what I'm trying to say. Holly, I'm sorry, did you want to say
It's an
something?
imperfect system. It's
Well,
just the way it
I
is.
just wanted to mention
That's why you gotta.
that
Right, but it's democracy.
that's the uniqueness of the Nantucket HDC. The fact that you guys are chartered by a special act,
Mhm.
that you're more than an architectural review board, that you have the aspects within your preamble, if you will, of the special act. I mean, there's a reason why I personally take the special act and compare it to the Constitution, and your design guidelines are like the Bill of Rights. There's a reason why, because it's true. It's the foundation of what allows you all to do what you do day in, day out, week in, week out for the island. And it's above and beyond what a regular architectural review board would be doing, so.
And that speaks to the planning part of it. Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Holly. We all do. The next one, these first two came right out of the other draft. Are staff recommendations provided and considered? Do staff have the necessary qualifications to provide recommendations? And I added, if so, is there sufficient capacity among staff's other work priorities? Because I think it's important not just to quantify, qualitative measures, but also how does it fit in quantitative into the day-to-day work? Because that's going to be important. We'll get interviewed on these, staff will get interviewed on these. Our minutes, and any questions on that one?
No.
Our minutes and agenda items processed in a timely manner. Are staff training educational opportunities available? Are they utilized?
I did want to mention one thing.
Yeah.
I know over the last, I would say, since I've watched HDC when I was in high school. Watch when the commission met at the high school in the
Cafeteria.
Yes, that was my first big introduction to the Nantucket HDC. And I know one board at that particular time can be very different looking at things as you all do now. But I also know that there had been a time where there was an actual planner type of person that assisted with reviews. And then there was a time where that was pushed aside and there was just an administrative person just handling the functionality of the commission.
It's the Bob Rivers thing.
Yes, and then now you're kind of back to position having professional preservation planner on staff. And quite frankly, when this position was created, there were a lot of historic communities in the country that couldn't believe that Nantucket never had one prior to mine. So I feel very, very fortunate enough to be able to be in this position as the first. Knowing that, I knew at 16, I wanted to get preservation, but my point is, I hope, and I think it is, the comments that I provide is very beneficial to the commission. That they are taken in with, consideration, and it's not a waste of my time. I don't think it is. I think you guys do appreciate it. And I would like to see how I could make it a little more easier, a little more proactive, providing it to you all sooner, with the amount of responsibilities and quite frankly, it's more or less a time thing, but if there's ways to make it so they're not hand scribble scratched and they're actually provided to you all sooner beforehand, that's something that I
Time
personally
thing
would like
being
to
time
think.
available to use.
I think that's a very good idea.
It's easier said than done, I will.
Well, because you wear
I
so
can-
many hats.
Yeah.
You need to give up some hats.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
Need to
or
delegate.
get some help.
Yeah.
You know, if you're, a lot of times, right, if you've got the background and the experience and the knowledge, it's easier to accomplish more things if you've got some, forgive me, minions, you know?
Mhm.
So there's, you know, that aspect to it. I want to just comment that some of these things, well, one thing that Holly mentioned is addressed in the first page in a sense that I agree, yes, it'd be wonderful. I think for me, I like to read through and be prepared in advance. Your comments in advance would be very helpful. I think it would be helpful because it's done on the record in a written form for applicants and in the future reviews and so on and so forth. But one of the items that's mentioned and why I think this forward is an important part of what the successful RFP person or consultant who receives is it includes an example of like being prepared for meetings. And if you aren't familiar with drawings, there is more to do to be prepared. You need, you know, you've got a level of understanding the drawings in addition to understanding where on the island this is. So you understand the context. So you're prepared with your comments. You don't have to, to my mind, you don't have to think through every comment, but you need to have the basic understandings of where it is. So you understand the context. If you don't have an understanding of drawings, if you can't pick up a set of drawings and understand exactly what's going on, like you're speaking a second language that you've spoken most of your life, then you need to be reviewing the drawings too. Part of the reason I mentioned that topic is because if Holly provides written comments, or for some, we say the advisory groups, we receive their comments in writing in advance of the meeting. And if we have questions, we ask them of them like we ask of an applicant, as opposed to hearing them read in a meeting. That would save a bunch of time. It's no good if people aren't prepared. This isn't a social club to my mind, and I'm not speaking against anyone. I'm just saying, you gotta understand the subject matter on every application, and if it includes staff comments, you should have read them. So anyways, I think the interview portion is gonna be really important, and it'll give us all an opportunity to discuss these things with people. I hope no one takes offense. On review staff operations on behalf of the commission, we got a few more. Our minutes, or a couple more, our minutes and agenda items processed in a timely manner. We did this, didn't we?
Yeah.
Our staff training education, we did that, okay.
We didn't have that.
So the other goals and objectives that we're conditioning our adoption of these draft standards on are number 3, other important items. Do the HDC advisory committees provide added value? That's from the original draft. I added in their current form. If modifications or changes are beneficial, if any, what are they? So I would presume that we will want to add to the number 4, which is the interviewee list, chairs of prior existing advisory group boards. Okay. Anyone have a comment? Yeah, please.
And this, I think, is just about the wording. Do the HDC advisory committees provide added value? If modifications or changes are beneficial, if any, what are they? You are seeing that language is to say modifications or changes to how the advisory committees do their work. Is that what that means?
So I can clarify, yes, I thought it was implicit, but I'm happy to clarify that with respect to their operations.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, no pride of authorship here. Any other comments on that? Connie, I know you're gonna raise your hand if you wanna, there's something in particular you wanna say,
Or shall,
or shall.
unmuted.
I have faith in you.
Yeah.
Are HDC fees commensurate with staff time? That was one of the original, and it was actually.
Oh, man.
They're gonna
I
have
don't need anybody-
Get help, they're gonna go up.
I don't need, well, here,
They're
okay,
cheap though.
here's the funny thing. And this has been discussed for years and years. The application fees that we charge and the fines that we levy, they do not accrue back to the HDC.
No, they don't.
They go to the
No.
town. Okay?
Town
They go to
board.
the general
General
coffers.
fund.
We could charge $1 million in
And it
application.
wouldn't go.
And
to
some
staff.
small, tiny, minute fraction of that would come back to the
Oh,
HDC.
so it doesn't
It makes-
directly.
No, absolutely not. You know, it's not like,
It's like social security.
So who decides the staff finances, like, to be able to hire
Well,
an extra person to check applications?
Part of that is odd, man.
Where
Part of
does
that is us, you know, I brought this up in a previous meeting, is we've never sat down and had a discussion of. We require as a minimum operating certain tasks be completed that we don't think are, or we would like to see a certain way of procedure. The end effect of a procedure that's in place that staff accomplished done a different way, because it would make a difference for us to operate as a commission. We've never sat down and come up with a list like that and forwarded it to the planning director, who would then make a determination about additional personnel or change of job descriptions or any of that stuff.
fees
But,
for?
but it's up to the planning director and with respect to how to do the budget and the staff and.
okay, but I wanna, this issue is daunting, okay? Because when I said it goes to the town, it doesn't go to the planning department, it doesn't go to us, it goes to the town. And so if the town decides that the extra $1.5 million that we got from increasing the HDC fees is better suited to repave the parking lot of the Stop and Shop. You know, I'm
Yeah.
totally pulling out of a hat, but like, they're in control, you know, FinCom is in control of where all that stuff goes.
Well, that
So-
money has to go through capital program.
Capital programs.
Well, okay, I think the point is basically this. Wouldn't it be wonderful if everything was in-house, right? The fines, okay, oh, now we're able to strengthen the organization. But it doesn't work that way.
It's not cause and effect.
It, you know, it's like
come up with-
so many steps up the ladder.
Come up with a sentence that puts that together,
Yeah.
fines and
exactly, 'cause
fees, because I think it's important to include it in here under other items as a topic for them to look into. And I think if, at the very least, what it does is it creates interview questions and it creates discussions of how to ensure the HDC operations are funded if, look, right now, it's a small change to make small changes. But if this review comes back and it has some changes that are fundamentally expensive, I think it would be appropriate to have had that question asked in advance.
Can I say something?
When you think about, it's not just about, you know, staff process applications and stuff like that. But we all in this room, we all know that out there, a million things are being done without approval, you know, in violation of approval, this and that. The power of enforcement is only as good as the number of people that you can actually have out there, like actually doing that work. And from that perspective, like at every single thing about the HDC, I think is severely underfunded.
Totally.
Yeah,
I think we should be able to levy fines that are more than $1,000 too.
Well, I read something that was put together in 2016 that said that, and I would like to have this part struck in from the public record. That says the HDC doesn't have the authority to fine, which I find very difficult to understand because under our act, we do.
Yeah.
And I think that this goes back to different judiciary consider the HDC in light of the 40C versus our individual act. our special act, which empowers us to fine for violence. I'm not saying we should be running out and finding everybody.
Right.
But so I think looking at that is an important element. I agree with you. Application fees,
Maybe.
enforcement fines, and viable fining mechanisms.
We have tried, you can hear me, we have tried over the years, went back to when Dirk Roggeveen was chairman, and we met in, as Holly said, in the cafeteria to get this established. When Mark Voigt was there, we did up the fines and we were getting them to come in. And that's when that business came up, that if we required an engineer, the applicant would not pay for it, it would be paid for by the HDC. It was after 16 that we lost that ability. It was there, it's been discussed, as I say, for 20 years. And it was going along until the whole thing was changed. And I think it's necessary, because no matter what we do, then they control us by not giving us the finances that we need to do our work.
Thank you,
So
Diane. So the idea is not only of is the topic we're talking about, but you're talking about an example of a service that could be funded as a benefit to the HDC in its review process.
Yeah.
Well, it also gives you the thing, if the fines that the HCC charges goes to the HCC, the HCC could then hire other people, they could do everything. It hasn't just to do with one specific thing. I was only giving that, as you do, as a description of what came up. But it
Right,
would-
which is why I thanked you for giving us an example of what could be done if the HDC had some control over its fees and fines.
right,
Okay, well, thank you. So I'll expand that to application fees, fines, viable finding mechanisms, and obviously enforcement. And can I snap a picture of that too?
Enforcement, I think, is a good one.
I
It's-
think
You
if
have
people
it
get,
really tough.
you know, like
Mhm.
slapped once in a while, really good, it might discourage the.
It's not, it's funny, because it's not just the HCC.
Mm,
The other big one is the Concom.
mm.
The Concom has, I've always said the Concom has tremendous power up front. Like, they can tell you, you can do this, you can do that, and then they issue their order of conditions. And the interesting thing about the Concom, and we have to consider ourselves.
And I'm
as the
going at
agency
5, so
Very, very lucky. I know, I'll make it quick.
One time.
The
Sorry.
Concom, a sign off by the Concom is not required to get a certificate of occupancy, which means you can say, you can take the order of conditions and sort of throw it out the window and say, yeah, all right, well, we'll do whatever you say, and then mow a lawn within 10 feet of the dune, and no power of enforcement, except for people like, you need to have staff going out and saying, or looking at an aerial photo and saying, wait a second, their lawn is like 2 feet away from the water. So that's a big
That's
problem,
interesting,
big
yeah.
problem.
And now, is their finding mechanism more viable than ours? And
No,
Yeah.
they haven't,
But
no.
why don't they have a sign off?
It's just the way it's set up. It's crazy, but at least we have to
Follow
send
up,
people out
sign
and you
up,
gotta have
yeah.
a sign off for the HC. You don't have to have that for a Concom.
Yeah, so really,
Anyway,
that's our most powerful aspect
It is.
on
Mhm.
enforcement.
It
is
absolutely
withholding.
is.
But they're not a permanent single person either. I mean, Billy does it, right?
Billy does the HDC inspections. for
Right.
us, Yes.
But he's also got many hats.
Well, he does
So-
signs
He
too.
does, yeah, and he does signs. I mean, Billy does a lot of different aspects, but that's the whole functionality of being, both Esmeralda and Billy. And Megan are land use specialists, so it's not just one aspect of land use, and quite frankly,
Right.
HDC is a form of land use.
Mhm.
So, it's a multi, again, we're a big cog, that's why I like to call it.
Well, and part of the reasons it's necessary is because you lose staff. I mean, look at the transportation planner, let's see our first Barry's going.
Oh, God.
Oh, now we got the other guy back.
Well, and
Right.
we're also gonna get grant money out of having somebody fill that position
Exactly.
where we aren't gonna be getting any grant money. So the point is that, the model that I mentioned that because the model Holly mentions provides coverage when the unicorn, if you will, which we've discussed, leaves the island for whatever reason, or moves to a different company. There's somebody who can fill in an essential duty for an essential service, and there's no other way to do it unless you've got, use the analogy of an NFL team quarterback and a backup quarterback. You're paying two salaries for somebody who sits on the sidelines 99% of their career until they're activated. Anyways, I don't have a horse in the race on that. It's just basic experience with the operations. Okay. Assess quantity and type of applications and application outcomes recorded to date within the town's EnerGov application processing system to determine whether any trends or significant changes exist. So this is basically to say that they're gonna find there's pools, more solar, and they might have some interesting information on how many applications were applied for that never actually got a COA, which would be kind of interesting.
Yeah. Right.
So I added the end application outcomes to that part.
Mhm.
D is for them to scope actions required to establish appropriate procedure standards and if necessary regulations. Two-part. Number one, to provide that qualified staff may approve routine application outside the OHDs, such as fences, door color changes, window replacement, and other non-substantive items. And then I added following consent type procedure. This without altering the act. So there's a multi-part goal there. One, staff gets involved. Two, it's under consent type procedure to address their butts not hanging out in the wind. If something slips by, it goes on the consent view pack. We're responsible to review those things. And then all of that without altering the act.
Can I?
Yeah.
You have used the word consent to describe this, and indeed, without altering the act, that process is in place.
Yes.
Like, Esme reviews applications outside the OHD, and if it's a fence that is consentable, it goes on consent. Now, I don't know the legalities of this, but I think Johnny McLaughlin, also not a lawyer, said like every single time,
He didn't like those.
absolutely no, staff is not allowed to approve anything. It's gotta come before the board. He was adamant about that.
So it's a recommendation of.
Right.
Well, it's essentially the consent.
Right,
it's
but it's
the
a recommendation
They're
of
not.
consent, so then we see it so that once we vote on those consents, it's consentable. So we have voted on
That's
it.
why you have to review
That's
it.
why-
And that's why
That's
at
why
the
we look-
beginning, we have them before the meeting.
Right, that you can look at them and see that there hasn't been a mistake.
And we tell people, just because you're on consent, don't assume it's going to be approved.
Yeah.
No, we do,
No, that's-
because
I do the same
seriously
thing,
why.
like I wait until
wait until the
the
meeting is
thing has
over.
been approved before I
And
tell anybody.
because it's not, people assume it's a given.
Yes, and I always feel really bad when that happens. And, you don't have your applicants not there because they figured it was through. so
Maybe a
they're-
note on the agenda saying this is on recommended for consent, but not consented yet. I mean, just a simple note on the agenda at the consent.
We could
Would
put
clear it
that
up.
in
So, yeah, no offense that no one's gonna read
I'm
because,
not offended.
everybody's in I can text, three words and an emoji and I've written a novel.
there. But I wanted to mention on this notion of, that was a recommendation that NAPC, National Alliance Preservation Commissions did from our camp. It was to say, improve HDC's efficiency to reduce delay and increase public support. Explore ways to delegate discretion to staff to approve or deny minor architectural changes to reduce workload for regular HDC meetings, explore new funding, hire additional staff to assist with review. But basically, at the end of the day, that gives the authority without opening up the special act. And I
Mhm.
understand why somebody like Tom McLaughlin wouldn't want to have the delegated specifically through a change in the special act to staff. And I would be a proponent of wanting to not open up the special act.
Right.
We absolutely have to.
Well,
Right.
just the sheer complexity of it.
Correct.
you know.
So I'm gonna just provide a couple of quick on the fly clarifications to this. That will, to my mind, this was an approved routine applications to be on the consent list. But for the sake of clarity, it will be to provide that qualified staff may advance routine applications outside the OHDs with examples following to consent procedure. Semicolon to denote that separately this, and I'll add, authority exists without altering the act. So that it's saying to whoever's reading this, that this can already be done.
Mhm.
The next is along the same lines, is to bring the processing of like-kind applications into the same regulatory scheme, which is to say, under our act. Including if necessary by establishing a regulation, something we can establish as the HDC after meeting the public notice requirements under the town charter to accomplish this, and again, without altering the act. So I'll clean up the language in there. So basically, like-kind applications don't come in and staff approves them
Correct.
where technically they are an and I'm not looking for more turf for the HDC, believe me. But technically, staff is approving architect changes,
They're not changes though, they're like kind
they're approving work.
materials.
The act doesn't distinguish between whether someone can approve something that's the same or something that's new. It just says that basically it distills down to the chair has to sign it. So this is basically to have them look at it, interview staff. I'm not gonna, we're not gonna be really interviewed on this one, and figure out a way to make sure that nobody's butt is hanging in the wind. That's really all that is. It's not to make a big change, it's how do we do it? And the idea was.
Just on, and gosh, I feel bad, because I know that Val certainly has to leave to go to another meeting. I thought that there was language in the legislation that said, applying for the HEC shall not constitute a like-kind replacement. Like if you're replacing a corner board, let's just say your corner board is rotten. So you don't have to go before the HDC board to replace a corner board that's rotten. That's simple.
Yeah.
Where it gets really seriously complicated is like-kind replacements of windows, okay? And it's like, we had some poor guy, some builder in Wisconsin who came in and he said, well, I'm gonna replace it with 6/6. Well, they were 6/6 TVLs. It was replaced it was approved as a like-kind replacement. And the next thing we saw was 6/6 insulated glass Anderson windows. And he's like, what's a 6/6? So that's where things get seriously
Right.
difficult.
Yeah.
Is like kind. And I always think that, our fallback there is the applicant has to document the hell out of what the condition is. If it's a
Mm-hmm.
window, you'd immediately know, like, okay, there it is, single glazed window, that's what we need.
And the red
Just like
flag
that.
is always the historic.
Yes, the OHDs, that's why we do not, we have that on our like-kind application that they must go to the commission.
Yeah,
Sometimes some people try to sneak them in and we have to, wait, nope, sorry, can't, we'll give it back to them.
Okay,
Nope.
yeah.
all right.
Right, and I think the language in the act is to the effect of nothing under this act shall impede maintenance,
Yep.
repair,
That's
or
exactly-
replacement
that's
Correct.
it, yeah.
of
And I
materials.
think that's where,
So the only idea there was to include like kind in the scope so that we make sure that it's covered appropriately. It's time to do a review. Let's make sure we're.
I'm
Cover
familiar with something like this, so in my day of being a planner in South Carolina, their structures are obviously quite different from the zoning perspective, but I had a fellow planner who reviewed all exempt subdivision plan. So like an A and R that the planning board does here under the subdivision control law of Massachusetts. That person was able to approve those without going to a board. But like how the like kinds are, whereas we keep record of them, they would also be placed on the agenda for the planning board to know that these were what were reviewed and approved at. And my understanding is that's kind of what Stephen's getting at, is we would be placing them on the agenda for more of like a codification aspect.
Yeah.
Because at that point, they've already been issued. We average anywhere from 15 to 45 a month, give or take. I can give you the exact specifics for the past 5-7 years.
Right, and I figured, I mean, personally, I have no issue with
Yep.
the way it's happening, or in the, no lack of faith in the ability to accomplish the task. I just want to make sure that while we're crossing Ts and dotting Is, we include this particular aspect.
Yeah.
It's act, and we'll be able to finish up before 5. We're gonna finish up in the next 6 minutes, I think. We've got just a few left. E, other important items. E, are commissioner training educational opportunities available? Are they utilized? I think this speaks for itself, and personally, I believe that we're here and we're so inundated that the idea of taking on some type of a course, even if it's on Zoom, that will, despite the fact that it might benefit us individually in understanding procedures or some other, helpful characteristic could be developed, it's just so much given the amount of hours we put in. So the idea that I'm hoping to accomplish with the changes to this draft and our best practices, and thankfully the inception of the organizational focus committee, is to try and lighten our load so we can make that part more, to the extent it's enjoyable, and we feel like we have the time and the energy to kind of individually partake in these courses. And I was just gonna add, perhaps they could also, I don't know, not really determine, but identify resources. And I think, Holly, what that will do is, you do this already, but
Yep.
it will take that off. It will be memorialized in this very important report. And then it's something you can point at when you say, hey, commissioners, I need 3 or 5 of you to sign off, and it can't always be the same 3. So just something like that. I presume no one's got comments on that unless somebody wants. Okay. HDC agrees further to complete this review HDC agrees further in order to complete this review, the following are to be interviewed. I just want to say grammatically, there might be some flub ups in here. I was trying to get to the beach. I was doing this,
all under
and
I'm coming down hard.
So interviewees would be current commission members, current staff, staff is capitalized to denote plus staff, and I'm going to change that. It says currently plus staff providing staff services to the HDC. There is no unintentional omission. It should be plus staff directing and providing staff services to HDC. So as to be clear that, this is the full chain of the plus staff. It should be the director and anyone who's involved. And I just wanted to make sure that was clear. So that's B, current staff. C would be a random selection of applicants, agents, and who make applications on a regular basis. I took out one time because I felt that is given with a little bit of experience with standardization and normalization and statistics. You could have someone who comes in and makes it compelling, based on personal characteristics alone, makes a compelling point that skews the information that's gathered, because it's such a short gathering window that it could really change the outcome of something that would be helpful, as opposed to having individuals who come in front of the board, the commission on a regular basis. The only other thing I wanted to be clear on this is that, to my mind, agents are not just the architects and the designers, but, for instance, someone like Bertha Reed or Steve Cohen, Sarah Elger, attorneys who we see and We respect their opinion, and I think community has
Yeah,
a good
this,
respect. for
this
them.
list could be long.
Yeah.
Because I actually wrote down past commission members.
Yep.
It'd be sort of interesting to get their perspective on, you know, how things are now vis-a-vis when they were back then. Past staff, to the extent that they exist, I mean, you know, a lot of them have moved off.
Linda, you're getting a time limit.
Is Linda there?
No, I
Oh,
don't.
okay.
But also the chair people of the board, of the, not the board, sorry.
Yeah, I have that I wrote here at the meeting, chairs of prior existing.
Yeah, chairs of the
Advisory
advisory groups.
Oh, yeah, good point. And hey, this is a dangerous one. General public.
To see the perception of what about.
I would-
Yeah, and you know, I think it's dangerous. Yeah, I know, I'm really torn because it's kind of, but
May I make a suggestion?
yeah, go.
Because I think, I've given this a lot of thought too. The idea there is, again, it can kind of skew things unnecessarily, whereas a separate component, I'm not suggesting it not happen, but as a separate component, there could be some type of a survey that was put together. And a survey needs to be carefully worded so that it's actually has an effect, not, you know, do you not like the HDC? Do you not like the HDC because you think X, Y, or Z? So you can elicit additional information and make it more
Not
meaningful.
Twitter.
No,
Right.
but most surveys are skewed for a purpose.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I would suggest is that what I would suggest is that we would consider a survey as like a compendium to this, if that's the right word, but at a later date. Or we could put in here, I have reservations about putting a survey saying authorizing a survey and an RFP without having any control over the survey.
I agree.
Listen,
That's all.
I said it's a really dangerous thing to bring up, but one thing that sort of intrigues and frightens me is if the view of the general public, and by the way, the general public in this case is like year-round people versus summer people, okay? Because I think you get very, very different responses from those two groups. But you know, like there's these management consultants and I had this guy that was the head of a big corporate, you know, head of a big corporation. And they sent in a management consulting team and turns out that like the guy who was heading the corporation was despised. And so they went before him and they said, hey, you know what, listen, you're despised. And so we need to work on, what things that you can do to be less despised. And it was not something that he enjoyed hearing at all, but it was helpful for him to know, like, okay, when I walk through the factory, you know, everybody's not thinking like, oh, here comes our wonderful leader, you know? And so like, when you say that you're on the HDC, I ran into Johnny the other day, and he's like, nobody talks to him about the agency. And he said, one guy comes up and he goes, John McLaughlin, I've been wanting to tell you this for years. You've made my life so miserable. And poor old 90-year-old John says, why did I make your life so miserable? It turns out the guy was a builder. And he said, you disapproved all my projects and I had to wait. And John just said, I was just doing my job. You know,
I agree with John.
well, we're not calling sawdust, right? But so I felt really bad for him because, you know, he gets this, you know, negative feedback. But
Can I suggest this survey will be a follow-up discussion?
yeah, no,
Yeah.
I fully understand the danger of that.
Yeah, and
particular-
I got
Well,
that.
you need to be able to take the criticism but then do you kowtow or do you say what John said?
Guys, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Bell's got 3 minutes to be in another regulatory meeting. I would like to get a motion on this and then we can discuss this topic further if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's roll.
So the motion would be that to,
Hey, man, okay, I gotta share this part, because it's all of us.
okay, so here. Well, you can do that.
Are you codifying all these comments so I can send? them?
Yeah,
No, actually, you make the motion. You make the motion and then I will.
Because
put
this
it
will
to
be
a vote.
going to the select board.
yeah.
Right.
So the motion is that the commission adopt the concept of an independent review subject to the following goals, objectives, and targeted outcomes. Goals, objectives, and targeted outcomes as stated at the March 9th meeting and to be presented to the select board with backgrounds and commentary being a vital portion of the request of the HDC.
That's your motion.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on Zoom, folks, so on that motion, Connie. Oh, you're muted. No, I think that was an aye, right, Connie?
Yeah.
Thank you. Diane,
Aye.
thank you. Carrie,
I,
Val,
Aye.
Stephen on your motion.
Aye.
I think that's more than five, but and I'm in favor. Was that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? It was 6, but.
Oh, it was,
Take your pick, take your pick.
a maximum majority.
Yeah, super,
Sorry.
super.
Can I get that motion off the tape from you before I leave?
I know.
Is it on video?
It's being recorded, yes.
Cool, thank you.
Oh, couldn't say thanks to Val.
Thanks, Val.
Thanks, Val.
Okay, so that concludes the organizational focus committee side of it, unless you guys want to talk about the survey thing, which I think is a really interesting concept, but it's.
it is an interesting concept. I feel like there's a love-hate. I mean, I think everyone has, not everyone, but I think the majority of people probably respect the fact that there is an HDC and that we don't look like hyenas and people are into preservation. But people can still build their houses, but then they hate to have to do the process.
How many people enjoy going to the dentist? You know, and
I
it's-
like my dentist.
Well, I actually enjoy getting my teeth cleaned in a
Mhm.
masochistic sort of way, but like,
Yeah,
you know, nobody particularly loves going to the dentist. But the fact is, if you don't go to the dentist,
right.
you're gonna have much larger problems further down the road. So, you know, it's easy to complain, but, you know, what's the alternative?
Yeah, and what would a survey change? Because if,
Yeah, it wouldn't do that much, but I mean, there's a certain population that thinks it's a totally waste of time and they really don't care if Nantucket changes or not.
Right.
Then there's other people who are passionate about this island
Yeah.
and preserving it. And I think that's just, those are the extremes, and then there's the middle ground. And
Yeah.
I think the middle ground is the general population that says, I'm really glad there is an HDC, but I hate having to go deal with it.
and just to be clear, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And just to be clear, what I say when what would change, I mean, as a regulatory authority, what would a survey change? Are we gonna, would we be making decisions then based upon
No.
survey?
Well, that's-
reports?
No, we're not. No, it's one of those things that like, I just think that the information would be valuable to
It
have.
would be, yeah.
You know, it's like a tool that you would have.
Well, it's kind of, do
But
you
what
want to
it-
know when you're gonna die or not? I think I don't want to know.
The interview part of the people that are listed here, I
Yeah.
think is important.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Having a survey for the general public, I think would open up Pandora's box.
it would be huge, well.
Yes, I
you know,
do
I've
too.
discussed this before, you know, like, what if the INM, you know, poll shows, you know, 90% of, you know, Nantucket residents disapprove of the HDC and its practices. That's not good. You
Yeah.
know, that's really bad.
That's.
And then not knowing, in addition, why, because the survey wasn't sort of designed to elicit that information.
Right.
Is it because their meetings are too long? Or is it because they do a bad job, or because they don't want to have that type of regulation? So it's.
You don't,
I think it also is sort of a little bit personal, if one person is like, I didn't get my thing the way exactly that I wanted it, but. Thank God they didn't allow a 5-story Stop and Shop building,
Right.
so it's like,
Yeah.
there's always this
and
specific, it's just like being on this board, every project has its own characteristics and own. Circumstance, you can't just regulate and say, okay, black and white, these are approvable, these are not. No, it doesn't work that way.
That's-
It's- And it's,
yeah.
and it's
That's another
a
thing that
democracy, it's a voted, you guys are voted in, I was appointed
Well-
because of the nature of my position, but.
Yeah, how many things do you guys see as commissioners around the island that you know was done years and years ago before you were on this board and you're like, why was that approved?
I drive around the island
And
all
it's different
day.
boards allow different things. I,
Correct.
20 years ago, doing anything more than a set of French doors was like, woo.
But
Now
not
it's
always.
4 and 5 and
I
6
see
and-
stuff go, oh, the press board wouldn't allow
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I drive around and look at,
Conversely.
I drive around and look at historic structures a lot when I'm out during the day. And I cannot tell you literally the amount of times I think that would never get approved by the HDC. And when I say the HDC, I mean the HDC from when it started,
Mhm.
looking at what, there are so many structural design aspects that would never get approved by the HDC. I just think it's interesting that,
There's
Okay,
so many quirky things out there and wonderful quirky
Yeah.
things that
Smith's Point.
we should have some.
Oh, yeah.
I've been out to Smith's Point a lot recently, and I look at those houses, all of which are like just unbelievably charming. But they've got like, one house has a lean-to roof, 2 stories with like a little bridge that connects over to another lean-to thing. And it's like, that is the craziest ass thing I've ever seen, but like in Smith's Point, it works, you know?
Been there for years. So who's going to do all the interviews? Did I miss that part?
The consultants.
so Diane, this basically what we went through today is the scope of services we're recommending to the select board as a body of elected officials. So they understand what we feel, as elected officials, they can do a review. We don't have to follow it.
No, I just wondered who was,
Fine,
Physically good.
this is us demonstrating our ownership of the concept by voicing our own areas of concerns and matters we'd like to have addressed. What we talked about today will be the basis of the RFP if they accept it that way. They don't have to accept it. I mean, I'm not saying they won't,
I
I'm
think
just
that
saying they don't have
they
to.
will.
It's like consent.
And I am awaiting back, for more feedback from the National Alliance Preservation
Oh,
Commission.
yeah, right.
They have
Yes.
received the draft. I actually did send what you sent to the commission to them as a, hey, this is kind of where they're going. You know, I'll give you an update, but I'm hoping, again, these folks are the cream of the crop. These are what they do this kind of stuff. And over the last few years, they've been able to tailor certain camp programs for places. So I'm hoping that they'll come back, looking at all the different aspects and knowing Nantucket, because a lot of them are intimate with Nantucket. And give us something that we'll be able to, because again, I think you may be concerned too. I'm concerned on having an organization grab this proposal for scope and not understand architecture or preservation to begin with. So that's why I've been really adamant with town council and the select board that we utilize the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, because that's what they do.
So I'm gonna,
Yeah.
Well, Steve.
I'm sorry, we didn't get to this point in the discussion before the motion because I would have liked to include that aside from the state law requirements for request for proposals, that the HDC will have a member on the selection committee. And I think that that's something I would suggest that's something that you contact the chair of the select.
Can we still have Diane, Connie, in fact, we actually have the quorum that I should have gone with before. Do you want to just do that as a separate motion?
Yeah, Holly makes a good point. I presume that this is gonna be, I didn't presume, but I would like to think that this is gonna be an organization, the organizations that did have a background in this type of thing. And preferably one of the organizations Holly's already mentioned,
Can we
but
limit it to that?
no, I
To
can't understand
the
law.
national, why not?
Because it's a public procurement process. It has to go out as a request for proposals. And it's a bid thing, but there is a bid selection committee or something to that effect. So basically, the motion would be that the HDC shall have a member of the commission selected by the HDC.
Yeah.
serve as and in equal capacity
Very similar to how I've handled our grant applications. So once we receive
to,
funding.
okay, HDC shall have a member of the commission selected by the HDC who shall serve as and in equal capacity on the bid selection committee.
This is part of this whole thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so basically we have to.
Ideally, this would have been rolled into the original motion, but we're gonna just append it.
Right, so we do it as an amendment or?
No. Well,
HCC, motion is the HCC shall have this is a motion to be made, this is a motion or a statement to accompany the adopted draft of services and the goals and as a goal and objective of that document, that the HCC shall have a member of the commission selected by the commission who shall serve in equal capacity on the bid selection committee for
You have to say that.
RFP. Pardon me? Diane?
No, I just wondered if you had to say as equal capacity, because I think everybody who serves as, there's no reason why that a member of the HCC wouldn't be.
I agree, but I don't think.
Yeah, that's the lawyer in me. That's the lawyer in me. You could easily become an ex officio and you don't vote. So that's just how I think.
But anyway, so that is a motion. Stephen has made a motion to append to the other motion. And so on Stephen's motion, Connie,
Aye.
thank you, Diane.
Aye.
Very good, Carrie.
Right.
Stephen on your motion.
Aye.
And I'm in favor. There we go.
I'll just say that I hope the select board members, I know they're just all sitting around watching this now, will take all of this in the spirit it's intended, which is the HCC taking ownership of its own destiny and actions and all that happy stuff.
I hope so.
Manager wanted you all to.
Oh, I want to comment. We did not include the town manager and admin in the list of interviewees. I did not.
Okay.
And the reason I did not is because it could easily be taken and perceived to be the party who's writing the check weighing in, and had that town manager been the planning director who oversees HDC, I would have not taken it out. But since we interact with the town manager, I can't think of really once in 6 years other than applications, that I felt comfortable removing it because the perception could be that and I'm not suggesting they would, but the perception could outweigh the benefit because the town manager is not typically involved with our duties.
Yeah.
To have weigh in. I hope that was acceptable to you guys.
And the other thing, again, trying not to belabor this stuff. These are our lists, and it could be that the interviewers say, hey, we're gonna go over and talk to the town manager.
Yeah.
We can't forbid them from doing that, so.
Yeah.
No, but we won't be paying them to do it.
Right, yeah. So listen, Stephen lost his quorum, so he's not going to be able to adjourn his stuff. That's gonna stay here all night. But for the rest of us, should we adjourn the HDC proper? If so, I'd like a motion.
So moved.
Make a motion.
No, Carrie beat you to it. So on Carrie's motion to adjourn, Connie.
Aye.
Very good. Diane.
Aye.
Thank you, Stephen.
Aye.
Carrie on your motion.
Aye.
And I'm in favor. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.